What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, joined by a very special guest in Stephen Holder, who covers the Colts for ESPN. Stephen, thanks so much for the time, man.
Hey, you got it. Anytime.
Looking at this matchup, heading into Sunday, a home opener for the Packers. Colts coming off their home opener, lost to the Texans, though I got to say, it is funny watching two teams that are both 0-1. There seems to be a lot more hope, if that's a way to phrase it, around the Colts, simply because of the performance of their young quarterback. I mean, we'll get into some of the more nitty gritty stuff in a bit here, but what is your takeaway from Anthony Richardson's performance in Week 1? Because goodness knows, across the NFL firmament, if you will, he has certainly caught some people's attention.
It is all upside, 100% upside right now. And
Right.
I mean, we expected that. You know, he is young. He's a dynamic athlete. All those things were kind of predictable. But ultimately, as I've been telling people all season, when they ask me, "Oh, what should I expect?" I'm like, "Well, I think I know." But my answer, or the caveat, I guess, would always be, "Okay, but I got to see it. We got to see more of it." And while, look, there is a lot of room for improvement. He's got to fine tune lots of things. The big plays, like, you can't teach it, you can't coach it. Like, some of that stuff is just God given.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell you, look, I mean, I covered Andrew Luck's career, and then the Colts have been in the quarterback wilderness since then. Okay,
Right.
and you guys don't know much about that, right? I mean,
that's not familiar territory in Green Bay.
No, it is an ugly and just a forsaken place to be. And
Right.
even for those of us just kind of along for the ride, just documenting it. And he has flipped the switch. It gives the locker room a different vibe. It sort of permeates the team, the teammates, coaches, staff, everybody. There's just this sense of, like, we don't know what he might do next. And we'll see how far he can take that. And certainly they got to clean up the other stuff. But that has changed, I think, just potentially the trajectory of the team, but certainly the feeling around the team.
It sure feels like, watching the game back against the Texans, the arm is so live. And obviously you saw the big touchdown throw, a couple of them, right? And you see an arm and a quarterback who can put the ball pretty much anywhere on the field. I mean, now, maybe sometimes not in the best spots, maybe sometimes against the better judgment of the coaches. But I think, as a defensive coordinator, if you're Jeff Hafley looking at Richardson and this Colts offense, you got to worry about the ground game. Jonathan Taylor is a major issue. There's no question, especially after a week that saw the Packers basically allow Saquon Barkley to rip off all sorts of problematic runs against them, lands in the end zone 3 times. I mean, that's a problem. But now, if you're the coordinator and thinking, I understand that, I could get hurt on the ground here, but he could at any minute rip off one of these throws that takes a chunk of the field. Is that something you suspect the Colts might continue to look at as far as trying to push the ball downfield? Has that been prominent in training camp, or was that a real surprise in Week 1?
No, not a surprise. I think, in fact, it's something they wanted to do last year. And when he got hurt, he being Anthony Richardson, they really lost that element of their offense. And they hadn't even really tapped all the way into it quite yet, because he was so green and they were just kind of starting out. A lot of read option stuff for him initially. So they hadn't really gotten to a lot of the deeper throws and shot plays that they wanted to get to. So now, having had the benefit of the entire offseason, he knows the offense. He has improved weapons around him as well. Jonathan Taylor's back, for example. So, like, they really felt like this was an opportunity to take that next step and to be more aggressive. And then you couple that with a coach in Shane Steichen who is not going to hold back. He's an aggressive coach, aggressive play caller, and you're going to see, I think, an aggressive offense on Sunday. You know, will it be quite as aggressive? Are you going to see the ball fly 63 yards through the air?
Right.
Okay, I can't promise you that, but but they're going to continue, when able, to take these shots. I think what will be interesting to me is, does Jeff Hafley and do subsequent opponents react to what we're seeing and take it away? And then how does he respond to that? How does Richardson respond to that? Can he play the underneath game? Can he be patient? Can he take what's there for him? I think he can. I think that he is there's a little boomer bust with him, certainly a
Right.
little boomer bust element, but we saw him in training camp take the underneath throws and check it down when necessary. All of those kinds of things that you just have to do in this league because they're going to react to what you do well. So I think he can adjust to that. The question is, how much of the potency of the offense does that take away, and how do they win and score and move the ball in spite of that?
You mentioned the weapons, and it's kind of hard to deny how talented some of these guys are. And obviously, everyone saw the huge throw to Pierce in the end zone. But would you say Pittman is the guy that they run through as far as the receivers go? It seemed like he had the most targets, the most looks, but that could just be one game.
Yeah, he's typically going to be the guy they go to. He is typically going to be their most targeted wide receiver. He is generally going to be the most productive. What he does not excel at maybe is the big explosive play. But when they need a play, when it's 3rd down and 3 and you got to have it, they tend to go to Michael Pittman. So there were times when he saw some doubles. I think the Texans know him well and certainly paid a lot of attention to him. So we'll see how the Packers decide to defend him. He may be more available to Richardson in this game. And I would also say that one of the things that Pittman has told me is that he would like to be more involved as a deep threat and stretch the field more this season. That's something he's been talking about. Didn't get to it in week 1, but we'll see. I'm interested, I guess, to see whether that's something he can capitalize on, that stated desire to do that. But yeah, certainly tough receiver, guy who's going to go across the middle. He's going to make contested catches, really solid hands. So you know what you're getting in him, known commodity. And then you've got those other threats on the outside that are maybe more threats down the field.
Looking at the totality of the offense, and you mentioned earlier the RPO stuff that they ran with Richardson last season. Clearly, obviously, maybe not an RPO, but a play outside the pocket where he's running is when he gets injured, right? And ends up missing so much time. Is that something you think they'll be reticent to do much of? I know they want to utilize his legs. Clearly, that's part of his arsenal, right? You don't want to completely clip a really potent weapon. But do you think they might be a bit more gun shy in that regard?
No, it's a good question and the right question. And I think what I've seen so far, what I've observed is this. The opinion of the organization is, look, he is who he is. We drafted him to be a dual threat quarterback.
Right.
We got to just play. And if he gets hurt and if his career is shorter than you hope for, God forbid, it just kind of is baked into the cake. I mean, I don't, want
cost of doing business, kind of. Right. No, but I get that. I totally get that. Because that's my point. It's like, it seems like almost cutting your nose off to spite your face because you want to be, quote, careful. But man, that is such a weapon for him and for the offense that I would think that'd be something they'd want to sprinkle in at least kind of intermittently throughout a game.
Yeah, it's just too much a part of their offense at this point. They've built this offense, so structured it around him, with his skill set in mind, right? So if you eliminate, some of his runs and some of the plays where he at least has the option to run, well, now you've scaled the offense down quite a bit, and so they don't intend to do that. They think that's what makes their offense explosive. It's what makes it dangerous. So it's what makes it hard to game plan for. So they're going to lean into it, frankly. I do think they will pick their spots, sure. But it will not be something where they only do it at the goal line or something like that. I mean, if you go back to Sunday, in fact, in the fourth quarter, they got a 4th down play down the red zone. They just, Shane Steichen is fond of saying, like, it's a gotta have it play. Right. And that means, Anthony, put your head down, go get the damn 1st down. Right. And that's what he did. There's no second thought about that. You put the ball in your most dangerous playmaker's hands, biggest, strongest, fastest guy on the field. Hey, I mean, that's pretty tempting.
It makes sense to me. Let's flip it around to the defensive side of the ball, because it is funny watching Packers fans, especially now that we have most likely a backup quarterback who's only been in the building for 20 days, getting his first start in Green Bay. And some of the reports coming out on Twitter this afternoon from Colts practice, where you have been, are about the injuries. And I did want to highlight the Buckner injury because I know he had a very good game against the Texans. I know he's a very good player, but I also read a quote, I think coming off of the game on Sunday, saying that, yes, it's, he is dealing with an injury, but I think the coach expected him to be ready for the game on Sunday, and there was an expectation that he probably wouldn't practice throughout the week. So can you shed some light on just where the kind of injury status is for not just him, but for a number of these guys, I guess, across the Colts defense?
Yeah, well, Buckner really is where the defense starts and ends. It starts with him, I guess, is what I should say. I mean, that three technique, who is just really, really active, disruptive, equally effective as a pass rusher and run defender. He probably doesn't get as much publicity as some of the other elite defensive tackles in the game. He's not Chris Jones, but he's in the next tier.
He's pretty close.
Yeah,
he's pretty close. Yeah,
he really is. He's been an All-Pro. Like, this guy is the real deal. And I tell you, he sees. I think he's in the top 5 in terms of interior linemen, in terms of drawing double teams.
Right.
So that tells you that offenses know, right? They watch the film.
Right.
They know what they're dealing with.
Right.
So anyway, talk to him today, in fact. And the latest from him is that this is probably going to be a recurring back issue for a while. I think it is not a new problem, apparently. He's not been specific about it because, what's the point in doing that, right? So,
right.
But we do know that this is something that he's been dealing with for a little bit. He is, I think, one of the toughest guys I've ever covered in my 20 years doing this. He is a guy who shows up on Sunday, one arm, two arms, whatever the case. This guy shows up on Sunday. So he didn't practice today, as far as I know. We'll get the injury report in a little bit, but I still think odds are he plays. Now, there is another injury of note that I'm very much interested to see how this plays out, and that's safety Julian Blackmon. He also, maybe not a guy that is a household name around the league, but a real veteran presence in their secondary, a good tackler, rangy player. He's also, one of the few veterans in that secondary. It's basically him and Kenny Moore, and then a bunch of kids back there in the secondary.
Right.
So
right.
He, I think, is critical because they don't have the depth in the secondary that they do have on the defensive line. As great as Buckner is, and he is great. If he were to not play, they have plenty of bodies to throw at that position. They don't have that at safety or in the secondary in general. And by the way, Juju Brents, you may have saw the news earlier this week, starting corner on the outside, second-year player, second-round pick from Kansas State last year. He's going to miss probably the rest of the season. So this will be their first game without him. Right. So they're going through a lot back there on the back end.
Quick back there, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to be blunt, they're fortunate they're facing the Packers situation this week. Yeah.
Yep.
So
no doubt.
But it still is a factor. I mean, if you're the Packers, you're going to have to put the ball in the air, right? I mean, you just
at some point. Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean,
Yeah.
so much is being made of how the Texans were really effective on the ground. I think for obvious reasons, though. I mean, I think the Colts are very worried about C.J. Stroud. Yes, they're going to take their lumps with Mixon, and they know they're probably going to give up some yardage on the ground, but there's no way that approach continues against the Packers. I think without question, no matter who the safety is, one of them is going to be down in the box for the majority of these plays, trying to make sure that Josh Jacobs doesn't get going. I mean, I know it sounds simple. It's football 101, but if you're the Colts, is there any other way to approach this?
No, I mean, I have had a couple guys basically say that to me, right? I mean, and because let's be honest, like, they at least, to their credit, did not insult my intelligence, so I appreciate that from them.
Right.
And what happened in week one is interesting and worth exploring a little bit because I have a story I wrote about this that'll come out in the next day or so, but they really were terrified of C.J. Stroud for obvious reasons,
for
right?
Good reason, yeah.
And he averaged, I believe, 324 yards in the two meetings against them last year, right? Including a 75-yard touchdown on the first series in the season finale, which was a game that decided the division winner. So they were petrified. Okay, so they formulated a rush plan that run game or not, the goal was you're rushing the quarterback first. And they actually had some success. They hit him 10 times. They got 4 sacks. He had 2 explosive plays versus the 5 or 6 he was getting in their games last year. So it was effective. The problem was they did it at the cost of Joe Mixon going for 155. That can't happen. It completely destroyed the time of possession, 40 minutes of possession for the Texans. Frankly, C.J. Stroud was I wouldn't say taking a back seat, but he was not the bigger problem. They just couldn't get off the field because of the run game. So I do think they will prioritize that. They are prioritizing stopping the run this week, also because of the situation in Green Bay, but also because they can't have a repeat of what just happened. So they're going back to basics, is what I was told. So I think you're going to see a Colts defense very focused on shutting down the run.
It makes all the sense in the world. Steven, I cannot thank you enough for the time, man. We'll be reading your coverage all throughout the week leading up to the game. Really appreciate it, man.
Hey, you got it. Anytime.